Welcome to the Economy Magazine. I'm Benjamin Chong Alfares with the top reports from the global economy. Coming up, are we headed for another global recession? And is the construction boom in Rwanda really a bubble? First, the headlines. Russia and Ukraine have reached a preliminary agreement on a price for winter gas supplies, easing concerns the dispute could disrupt supplies to Europe. Ukraine agreed on a price of $385 per 1,000 cubic meters of gas until the end of March. But Ukrainian Prime Minister Arseniy Yatsenyuk said it was premature to refer to the agreement as final. Stumbling blocks remain, and officials from Ukraine, Russia, and the European Union will meet Tuesday to try to settle on final terms. Two of Japan's newly appointed female ministers resigned following scandals over political funding and donations. Trade and Industry Minister Yuko Obuchi resigned early on Monday amid claims her support groups misused political funds. Midori Matsushima, the Justice Minister, resigned after an opposition party accused her of violating the election law on political donations by distributing paper fans to voters. The resignations are likely to dampen the strong public support Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has enjoyed since his return to the premiership in 2012.
I would like to deeply apologize from the bottom of my heart that I was not able to contribute at all to any of the wide range of the problems that I was given.
Funding shortfalls have forced the United Nations World Food Programme to cut rations by 40% to Syrian displaced people inside the country. Although the program feeds 4.5 million Syrians in the country, it is still 1 million people short of what it needs to be, World Food Representative Matthew Hollingworth told Reuters. The program says it requires $352 million for its operations as a whole until the end of the year. The Syrian war has led to the death of more than 190,000 people and displacement of millions inside and outside the country.
I need these medicines every 15 days and I do not have money to buy them. I will have to stop my medicine in order to get food because we cannot live without food.
German pilots union VZ called a strike at Deutsche Lufthansa for October 20th and 21st, targeting the airline's Airbus 320 planes as well as Boeing 737s. The union said the walkout would last from 11 GMT on Monday until 21:59 GMT on Tuesday, affecting all short and mid-distance Lufthansa flights from Germany. VZ, representing about 5,400 Lufthansa pilots, wants the airline to maintain a scheme that allows pilots to retire early. The pilots' move follows a strike by train drivers in support of pay and negotiation rights, which halted 2/3 of long-distance trains on Saturday and Sunday.
Es ist ja nicht so, dass sich Lufthansa nicht bewegt.
It is not the case that Lufthansa is not negotiating. If we look at the wages, which are currently on average of around 150,000 euros a year, Lufthansa offered to add another 700 euros a month. The early retirement conditions are and remain some of the best in the world, if not the best.
IBM agreed to pay GlobalFoundries $1.5 billion to take on unprofitable chip manufacturing unit off of its hands. IBM will also receive $200 million worth of assets, making the net value of the deal $1.3 billion. In a 10-year partnership, GlobalFoundries will supply IBM with power processors in exchange for access to IBM's intellectual property. Manufacturing microelectronics accounts for less than 2% of IBM's revenue, but the division loses as much as $1.5 billion a year. The global economy has darkened since the summer as choppy financial markets, the spreading Ebola virus, and regional conflicts increasingly weigh on consumers, businesses, and investors. And as countries remain divided regarding the policy necessary to remedy the ongoing financial gloom, the markets remain blurry. Anthony Lasme brings us the story.
A wave of panic has hit markets around the world. In Europe last Thursday, stock markets in Lisbon, Madrid, London, and Frankfurt fell by over 4%. Despite a rebound Friday, the French index CAC 40 lost 11% in October. There's already been a recession in Italy, a slowdown in Germany, and a French deficit too. And Athens' desire to pay back IMF loans earlier than expected could set up an explosive possibility. The markets there lost 5.7% last Tuesday and 6.5% last Wednesday, and borrowing rates jumped 8%.
Markets by nature hate uncertainty. So they need, in my opinion, more clarity, not only regarding the post-IMF situation, the IMF monitoring mechanism in place, if any, of course.
This renewed volatility is also a reflection of a succession of bad news from around the world. Beyond fears of the Islamic State organization and Ebola, there's been a roller coaster in U.S. markets which dipped early last week and rallied to some extent later in the week. Oil prices are dropping, which is at least good for consumers. Jobs are up too, but the unpredictability in markets like the U.S. and slowdown in emerging markets such as China are worrisome. In Europe, some say markets need European Central Bank head Mario Draghi to buy government bonds to get investment rolling. Southern countries in Europe as well as France support this policy, but Germany still refuses. Even so, Germany, often thought of as the engine of Europe's economy, is also facing a slowdown, expected to grow 1.3% this year despite an earlier estimate of 1.8%.
We're approaching a perfect storm here. We're looking at issues of Ebola, which is probably the biggest worry that could spin out of control, weakening economic figures out of the US, incredibly weak figures in Germany and the rest of the Eurozone. American
monetary policy is an additional factor. The Fed is expected to end its bond purchases soon, which had been aimed at driving investment into stock markets. Expectations of an end to the accommodative policy may slow the market too. The market roller coaster already seen may be just a small indication of things to come.
We're joined now on the Skype by Tal Keinan, CEO and co-founder of investment management firm Clarity Capital. Mr. Keinan.
Thank you for having me, Benjamin.
So the markets have been characterized by extreme volatility in recent weeks, and just last week on Wednesday and Thursday, we saw Wall Street drop tremendously as investors were flocking from stocks into bonds. What's going on?
Well, I think there are a couple things we should lay out in advance. One is, retrospectively, everything looks much more clear than it does looking forward, and I think we should take that as a warning against any explanations of market behavior that are too precise. If we had all the answers looking backwards, we'd be much better looking forward. So let's start with that. I think there are two things going on. One is something that you touched on in the last piece, which is sentiment. Okay, so it's tough really to know how much to attribute to something like an Ebola scare or something like that. But that's certainly been definitely a factor that's been filling the airways and the markets recently. So people are definitely focused on that. There are some underlying economic fundamentals that have changed and worsened over time, and I think that is also part of the story.
Okay. Would you say that this is a gambler's market, or is there some logic to the situation?
Right. Gambler's market, we are not rushing to sell right now. I'd say this: you have technicals that are supporting a near-term rally. The markets are quite oversold at the moment. Equities are oversold. The dollar is probably overbought at the moment. That's short term. Longer term, I do think you need to look a little bit at the fundamentals, and I think a few things have changed over time. So the headwinds that we're looking at kind of medium term are, number one, U.S. dollar strength. The U.S. economy and the U.S. Fed is on a tightening cycle while the rest of the world is on an easing cycle, and that will definitely speak to dollar strength going forward. And that is something that is going to provide headwinds, particularly to the U.S. economy. And what we see is part of the reason for this is economic weakness pretty much everywhere else in the world. German manufacturing is down. Europe is probably in recession. Japan has dipped back into probably temporary recession. The Chinese economy is expanding at below expectation paces. So we are looking at a relatively unpleasant economic outlook. This is not a crash by any means. You know, equity markets will be volatile. You can't just go in one direction, and we've had quite a run in recent months. So I think this correction is something that was coming. It was very difficult to predict the timing, but it's something that was coming. To jump in right now aggressively and buy, or jump in aggressively and sell, I think to answer your question, that would be a gamble.
Okay, gotcha. Well, Tal Keinan, CEO and co-founder of Clarity Capital, thank you very much for joining us.
All right.
Construction sites and cranes dot the horizon of Rwanda's capital, Kigali, a sign of the city's ambitious vision of the future. But some are concerned that the building boom is little more than a bubble. Here's the story.
These cranes bearing down on the Rwandan capital Kigali are carrying out an ambitious plan to transform the city of 1,000 hills into Africa's Singapore. It's all part of the government's vision to turn Rwanda into a middle-income country by 2020 and a magnet for investors.
Notre vision 2020, c'est d'avoir
Our 2020 vision is to have economic development that is guided and led by the private sector. We see that the demand is there and is really strong. It's only investors who are taking advantage of these opportunities.
Ce n'est qu'aux investisseurs de profiter de ces opportunités.
In the capital's financial center, small businesses have been told to either move into the high-rise buildings or move out. But some retailers are worried the move will prove disastrous for profits.
It will cost us dearly. We'll lose our customers. I've been here for 7 years. My customers know me, and I'm going to tell them where I'm going.
A number of publicly funded projects have already sprung up around the city, whereas others are lagging much further behind, like this conference center. Elsewhere, land remains bare. It isn't only Rwanda's physical infrastructure that is being redesigned.
It's still challenging because if you look at what's planned, all the tall buildings, it's also forcing a change in the mentality of the population. Will we be able to live up to it? Will there be a population that will grow to fill all these buildings? Everything will depend on the evolution of the economy.
In 2013, GDP growth slowed to 4.6% after averaging more than 8% for a decade. And some investors remain cautious about the building boom. But the government insists that everything is going according to plan. After all, Rome, or Singapore, wasn't built in a day.
And now for discussion of other reports from around the world in Media Watch. Daniel Roth.
How's it going?
Good, thanks for joining us. So I understand that Bill Gates now has joined the club of Thomas Piketty readers.
Yes, he's one of the about 2.5% who actually got through the 700-page book.
Well, he has enough time to do it, I guess.
Yeah, he's got the money, so he's got the time. He retired from Microsoft, so he's okay. But he got on Skype with Thomas Piketty after reading it and had a conversation with him, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
The richest guy on Earth talking with the guy whose remedy is taxing the richest people on Earth. It's an interesting story.
And I find it hard not to be cynical reading these articles written by people who have so much money. You know, on the one hand, it's like, wow, yeah, great. They're talking about inequality. On the other hand, yeah, okay. But they have billions of dollars.
Yeah, so Bill Gates is saying, okay, Piketty, you're right.
Yeah.
There is inequality. It's bad. We need to make sure that we're taxing people the right way. Less taxes on labor, more taxes on wealth, things like that. I agree with you there, but However, but, and you know, people say that but kind of negates the first half of any sentence, and it does in a little way. Bill Gates is saying, actually, but it shouldn't be policy. We should, like me, I'm the richest guy on earth and I'm giving away half my fortune when I die. I don't want my kids to be spoiled. I don't think that building dynasties is a good thing. And he says in America, we haven't done that so far. Now, of course, there are attacks on estate taxes, people trying to cut those down. But what Gates is really coming to, he's really saying is you're right, but let's not make it a rule. Let's just rely on people like me, good, rich people, to give away our money. Now, it leaves a lot of room for cynicism because...
Why should he be the one to decide where the money goes?
Right.
Because he worked hard and he was successful?
Yeah.
That's basically his argument, right?
And he's saying anyone can do it. And
it's not old money.
He's pointing to in America that old money's not such a... It's not there. It's not a caste system in America.
There's no Vanderbilt, not really.
There's
a conspiracy theory.
It's a conspiracy. No, I mean, there are people who inherit money, but a large number of the Forbes 400 have made their own money. But he's cherry picking there because when you look at the millions of people who are working hard, 2-3 jobs, they don't fit into that mold really. They don't fit into the mold where he's pointing to half of 400 people who made their own money compared to millions and millions of people who can't.
Okay, well, Daniel Roth, thanks for joining us and letting us know about Bill Gates and Thomas Piketty. That's the end of The Economy Magazine, your daily source for economic and financial reports at I24 News. I'm Benjamin Chong Alfares. Follow me on Twitter at Chong Alfares and send us your comments so we can do something with it. Thank you very much.